Welcome to Con Carne. I'm James Van Osdol, and if you're new to the podcast, if you came here because of my guests on this episode, welcome. Glad you're here. I usually record this podcast in my car, but make exceptions for people like the guests I have on for this episode. But if you came here because of this episode's guests, I might also point you in the direction of recent episodes. Jake Burns of Stiff Little Fingers was on episode 943. We talked about Stiff Little Fingers' farewell U.S. tour, which is starting up very soon. Episode 942, that's a new band called Deep Tunnel Project, featuring members of Tar, Silkworm, and Airstream Futures. Super cool band. And way back earlier this year, episode 924, I had the guys from Smashed Plastic on. They press records. They have the only record pressing facility in the Midwest, or at least in Illinois. Fascinating discussion about how records are made and the costs and details behind that. So anyway, welcome. Con Carne, presented by Alex Ross Art, alexrossart.com. If you're watching on video, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, here's a little bit more about what Alex Ross is all about.
It's Con Carne. Let's eat in the car. It's Con Carne. And now here's the star of our show, James Van Osdol.
It's almost time. We are weeks away from the Fight for Air climb happening at Soldier Field on the lakefront here in Chicago. The Fight for Air climb is something I'm doing in partnership with the American Lung Association to raise funds, raise awareness to fight lung disease. So I did this back in March at the Oakbrook Terrace Tower, took on all 30 floors of the Oakbrook Terrace Tower, and now I'm ready to take on the stairs of Soldier Field, and I hope you'll do it with me. Get yourself signed up. Go to fightforairclimb.org/Chicago, and once you're there, click on Register as a Team Member and search for Con Carne, and you can join my team. Or you can start your own team. You can do this solo. We just want to see you there. Wear something comfortable. Get ready to take on the stairs. We're going to Soldier Field. Fightforairclimb.org/Chicago. Safety and security. These are things that you and I want, need, and expect. What if you could be secure in the knowledge that your house would be well lighted when you walked in the door, and know that everyone inside was safe? Or know that you ordered that package last week and it was delivered and secured once it got to your place. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about smart living, turning your home into a smart home. And my guy Dan at Easy Automation will help you learn what it takes, and it's not hard, to turn your ordinary home into a smart home. Embrace the future of smart living. Get a no hassle, no strings quote by calling my guy Dan. You can call him direct. He wants you to. 630-730-3728. Or you can go online, get a hassle-free quote that way. easy-automation.net. Metal Machine Muzak is a reimagining of Lou Reed's infamous Metal Machine Music album. And this release has been curated. It'll be released on May 3rd by Dave Gebroe. He is the creator and host of the successful and much listened to Discograffiti podcast, described as the Music Obsessives podcast. And Dave Gebroe joins me for this episode, along with the fantastic Lou Barlow of Sebadoh, Folk Implosion, Dinosaur Jr., etc. Lou is one of the contributors to the album. Dave is the curator. And here we go. It's Con Carne, episode 946. So, guys, let's start with Lou Reed, Metal Machine Music, considered by no small amount of people to be one of the most unlistenable albums ever made. Before we dig in, I'm going to read some quotes. An act of provocation, a jab of contempt. That's from Rolling Stone. Trouser Press said of Metal Machine Music, 4 sides of unlistenable oscillator noise. And then Lou Reed, in a biography, said, I put out Metal Machine Music precisely to put a stop to all of it. It was a giant fuck you. I wanted to clear the air and get rid of all those fucking assholes who show up and yell vicious and walk on the wild side. So I'll start with the obvious question. Is Metal Machine Music good?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely
So-
good.
So I guess defend the album to people who just don't get it.
Well, to me, it sounds like a pretty it might be a fuck you, but it sounds to me like something that he enjoyed. It sounds it to me like it serves the purpose of really good experimental music is that it inspires me. Like I don't want to listen to it. I want to just immediately do it myself. And I think that sound, I was listening to it today. I listened to it in my car and I listened to it here at home on vinyl, and I was like, it's a perfectly I think he was ahead of his time a bit for sure doing that. But then again, there was a lot of precedence to it that he was exposed to in New York and the New York art scene. So it really wasn't that outrageous. And it actually fits him. And I think he enjoyed it. There's a really actually joyous little burble of music of like, it almost sounds like sort of treated strings that kind of runs through it. There's several elements that kind of reoccur in that one. There's one that's just this beautiful, like shimmering, it's great.
Dave, obviously this album left enough of an impression on you that you thought, I'm going to turn this, or I'm going to create a tribute album, a reimagining of this album. What does this album do for you? What does it stir in you? Is it the same stuff Lou's talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, Lou was able to kind of take the conceptual notion of it and spin it in, through the sausage grinder of his perspective. And the way that it came out through him, actually through all of the four guys, everyone had their own, once it came churning through their perspective, it came out sideways. To one of the guys, it came out sounding kind of the same, which is a fuck you to the notion of the fuck you, because it's guitar shrieking feedback as ambience. So, I love that aspect of it. But Lou, I think, the next 3 weeks of the show, starting tomorrow morning, is going to be just an exploration of both Metal Machine Music and Metal Machine Muzak. There's 4 episodes this week, 4 next week, and then a guy who's writing a book about Metal Machine Music. We explore what is it and all that kind of stuff. And what I love about, at a base root level, what I really love about the record is that it's everything. It's a fuck you, but it's also high art masquerading as a fuck you. And it is something that could easily be listened to over and over and over again, and you could get a lot out of it, or you could just know that it exists, and that's enough.
For me, this is an album I listened to, I think, in high school. I listened to it once, and I'd never really thought about revisiting it. I always felt that people who said they liked the album were kind of hipsters or trying to be contrarian. Hearing 2 academics talk about it, it's worth re-exploring. And certainly hearing Metal Machine Muzak, this reimagining, it warrants some re-listening or going back in. Dave, when you conceptualized this reimagining and you approached artists like Lou Barlow, who's with us, did people laugh or say, wow, that's so fucking nuts, it just might work? What was the response?
No, because I wasn't coming at it like a joke. This was not a joke at all for me. Mostly I was curious because it was such a blank slate. I got the responses from the artists that I approached were everything from abject fear, because the only criteria I gave was 16 minutes and 1 second. It's got to be that long because that's how long all the sides were. But other than that, it was a blank slate. And so some people cowered in fear. Others were extremely excited about it. I had one of the artists, one of the 4, get actually angry with me during sections of it, and I laid low during that time, but he apologized profusely and then thanked me by the end because he's a perfectionist. So I'm not giving no boundaries, but so I didn't approach it like a joke. And objectively, it's a cool idea. I knew it was, but it's really what you do with it. And Lou, for one, I mean, worked his fucking ass off. You could hear it in the material. And, I mean, I've been a sycophantic fan of Lou's for a long, long time. And to be honest with you, his work on this made me fall in love all over again with him because, the thing about being a fan of Lou's is that, his heart, it's right there in his music. His soul is present in it. He can't just churn out bullshit. He's incapable of it. So even when the music is not as good as other music that he's done, it's still coming from inside him, and you can really hear that with this in a way that I felt incredibly touched that he decided at the end of it, "Fuck you, I'm not giving that to you. This is too special for me."
To hear you describe the parameters, it's almost like the Aristocrats. Like, how the Aristocrats joke has to end, but you kind of jazz and freeform your way to that conclusion. Everyone has their own angle in. Lou Barlow, your track on this, definitely, I think, the most, listenable is not the right word, but it's accessible, more so than I would have expected going into this. There's that kind of spoken word narrative. It's almost ASMR in its approach. It's a very pleasant listen. So I guess the question is, what was your approach? How did you go into this?
I just being offered to do 16 minutes of whatever I wanted, loosely based off the concept of Metal Machine music. Because like you, I mean, I got the record, when I was a kid, maybe like 19, 20, gave it a spin and never went back to it. But I mean, I appreciated it, and I really felt like when I just thought the idea was brilliant, Dave's idea. And I knew when he asked me, I was like, I'm going to have to do this. And then I also knew that it was going to just completely dredge my whole life. I just felt like it was going to somehow just make itself be, I was going to have to speak to myself extremely honestly about, I was going to have to make a really, I would have to pour my heart into it. I knew it, and I was a little scared of it because of that. And I did, like, it did things to me. Because I really do feel like that Lou Reed piece is a very there's something very personal about it. And I feel like it's probably something that soothed him at the time. And I was really trying to find something that really soothed me and spoke to me. And also because you're sort of, I didn't have any like song structure things. I think that excites me so much. I'm like in my mind, like I have this parallel life as like a purely just a guy who just is shuttered away in a shack making nothing but collages, just Joseph Cornell style, I have this sort of alternative universe where that's me, where I'm this very strange, very lonely person making these really intense collages and sonically. So I was able to really express that part of myself with this, and I was really grateful that he did it, that Dave had asked me, and then it became even more of like just this soul scraper than I'd even imagined, and I delivered it to him at the very last minute. I just really waited. I just kept stewing over every aspect of it. So,
and I mentioned before you guys jumped on, May 3rd is when the official release happens. What's interesting about these 16-minute and 1 second length sides or songs, I mean, you have to make yourself a little vulnerable. You don't have the comfort of that 3.5 minute song structure, of that hook for people to lean in on. I mean, you have to be pretty confident about who you are and what you can do.
Well, I think also, I mean, I thought from the outset, I mean, there is where you could just make guitar feedback and you could, I mean, there's things that you could do and just let it ride. But for me, I'm like, no, it has to be a journey. It has to be it has to be a story. I mean, like one of the very first things that I released as a kid, like on a Dinosaur Jr. record, was a tape piece called Polito, which was a very involved tape collage with songs sort of coming out of it. And so that collage stuff, and when I was very even younger than that in high school, the first things I learned to do was just make these just sheets of white noise, and I would just sit with speakers to my ears and just listening to like the sounds that you would make just by repeating recordings over and over and over again on portable tape recorders. It would just make this high-pitched squeal, you know. So I loved the abrasive part of it back then, but for this piece, I was like, I tried to shy away from anything that was like that grounded the piece. Like to me, like my criticism of Lou Reed's piece is that he has a very high feedback through most of it, just going whee, and it kind of grounds the piece because there's actually so much going on in there's actually several layers going on, but I think that that repetition of high feedback grounds it. So I really went to great lengths to try to avoid having anything that truly grounded the piece, you know, like I wanted it to be just, you know, amorphous and moving and through that 16 minutes. So,
and I gotta say that Lou's early motifs in his collage work, I'm practically a student of. I mean, I don't know what it's from, Lou, but that piece that na 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 na,
yeah.
that is repeated like 100 times through your early work. Sky,
Yeah, that was a theme. And then I found that when I layered it on top of itself hundreds of times, it created this incredible glow, just like this. And then all the different iterations of that same sound. I used a sped up version of Behind Dinosaur Jr. songs, like Tar Pit, this Dinosaur Jr. song on You're Living All Over Me. The background, the noise that takes over is that same piece, but sped up, you know. So I did have themes that I had worked on. It was just, but it's the process of making music like that or making pieces like that is so involved and so repetitive that I couldn't, there's no way I could live a normal life.
No, and I got to tell you, the work that your work inspired in myself and in a very esoteric friend of mine at the time, spun off into some very kind of dark, we thought that you were into Crowley magic.
Yeah.
That we thought for sure, especially with Healthy Sick, some of the lyrics in Healthy Sick, we thought for sure that you were messing around with maybe not dark arts.
It was actually like Eric Gaffney and I, when we formed Sebadoh, we were going to Bible readings. We weren't, we were very interested in like the spiritual realm, but it was never, there was no particular thing that I ever adhered to or was. I was raised a Roman Catholic. I think a lot of what I do is like a lot of stuff that like that kind of stuff that you're sensing is me working through, you know, having to go to fucking church every Sunday for 12 years of my life.
So you're not a warlock is what you're telling us.
I'm not a warlock, but I've had people like approach me. I've had people
I can't be
come at me and be like, just like, you fucking ruined my friend. I had one guy that like was like dogging me for a long time, like writing me letters like, you ruined my friend's life with your evil music. And he explained why it was evil. And
yeah, see, I didn't see it as evil. Like there was, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that the work that it inspired at the time,
yeah,
it dovetailed to me with Burroughs and Byron Geisen and a lot of the cut-ups and manipulation of time and space. And
I did think that you could reach a portal. I was looking for a portal. I'll say that. I was definitely looking for like creating some kind of like passageway, you know. There was, and just the idea that I think, especially like when I was first recording, and what really got me excited about home recording was that they sound like transmissions. And I was so obsessed with AM radio when I was a kid, and just searching the dial and finding like radio stations from all over the country, or just, I had a friend with a shortwave, and I was absolutely obsessed because you could just just transmissions, mysterious transmissions from like other worlds. And I just love the idea that you could do that, but make it from it could be a form of like soul music, like
Yeah.
this, like I'm just saying like but very ghostly and soulful and mysterious
I'd
and
wake up in the morning and have "Don't let nobody control you." Don't let it. That would like go through my head over and over and over again. And very, I mean, inspirational. It is soul music, but like from the dark depths of the soul. But I don't mean
yeah.
not in an evil way.
I know. I'm just saying that it was. I did run into people that there was a lot of different interpretations of what I was doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And actually, on the release day itself, so this week we're doing all the artists' relationship with the record itself, but the release week starting on release day is, we're talking about Lou's approach to his material. And Jesus Christ, does it get deep? I mean, it was kind of supposed to be an almost perfunctory thing that instead flipped into one of the most profound conversations I have ever had in my life. And parts of it run through.
well, you caught me like right after I had finished the piece, and I was just like, I was reeling from it, and kind of went into something approaching a depression from like a few weeks after that. I sort of feel that I've only kind of emerged from it since then, and it's actually like it kind of changed because the conversation we had was like it was intense because there was a lot of things coming together as I was finishing it just in my personal life, and this just also just it I think because I had taken so much, there's so much of the past in that piece too. Like I had all of these bits and pieces of my past and present that I mixed together that it left me with, I was in such a like strange sort of nostalgic, but like I was just looking over. I mean, I don't want to be dramatic, but like the wreckage of, just you're like the past can sort of feel like a lot of wreckage.
Yeah. And
So it's like I was like feeling very introspective.
interestingly, except for Corey Hanson, everyone who worked on this is middle age. So Lou was kind of a kid at the time, but this is a provocative statement made by guys, myself included, who are like more than halfway maybe across the tightrope. So different perspective, and there's a darkness to it that's real. It's not a put on.
And again, the podcast you're talking about, the show you're referring to, where you're going to go doing all those deep dives, that is Discograffiti. It is your show. What I've been dying to ask you, independent of our Metal Machine Muzak discussion, I think it is so hard for a podcast to properly talk about music. You're describing songs, you're describing chords, notes, progressions without the music to refer to. I think it's a real challenge. And I think this is why you don't see many successful music podcasts, is because it's conversation about music, which I think is very difficult to pull off. I think it's difficult to write about music. I think it's difficult to talk about music.
That's why it really, it mainly relies on emotional response and, the emotional underpinning of how it was created, or, I don't go into chord structure. I'm not a muso in any sense. I can't read music. I'm not a musician. So for me, it's one part Chris Farley interviewing Paul McCartney, and another part, I'm just pulling the wool, because it really is using music as a loss leader to talk about all the issues that that inspired Lou to do his piece. Like you and I were talking about before Lou got on the call, we this show was born out of an unending series of traumas. So it's I close every single episode saying, "Don't let our youth go to waste," because the stuff that was seemingly important to us when we were kids if it doesn't strike you as even more important now, then you've lost the plot, as far as I'm concerned. And it's why maybe I'm not as close with some of the friends that I had when I was younger, because they're more content to talk about weather or or their mortgage, or topics I just really can't relate to anymore, because I don't really have a mortgage anymore. But the music that that was so inspiring to me when I was younger, now I'm fucking clinging to it like a buoy.
So jumping back into Metal Machine Muzak, again, out on May 3rd. It'll be covered in great length and detail on Discograffiti. The other artists who contributed, Cory Hanson, Mark Robinson, W. Cullen Hart. One of the things that I find so appealing about this project is that none of the 4 tracks, like in the Venn diagram of this release, there is no overlap. No one sounds the same. No one is going at this from the same direction. 4, I think, wildly different approaches to their 16-minute and 1-second tracks. Fair to say?
Yeah, and also not a slouch in the bunch. I mean, that's such a recurring theme with tribute. Any kind of compilation with a bunch of different artists, it's always one, maybe 2 that I'm buying the thing for, and then I'm always pissed that I had to get it for that one track. And this is 4 great artists. And also, let's also mention that Lou's got a show, a great podcast called Raw Impressions, that it's been an amazing experience, like Lou, like we were talking about, that you stuck with it. It wasn't just, I was wondering if it was going to be a lark for you, but this is a real thing for Lou.
No, I think when you talk about music podcast being difficult, because you talk about it, like when I did doing my podcast, I'm like, I'll make the music for it. That's my thing. I'm like, and I'm going to take out my old 4-track and I'm going to do it from the really quick lo-fi approach that I used when I started. And then I would color the conversations that what my wife and I have with some bits of songs. I recreate old commercials. I do TV theme songs, but I do them all through this lo-fi blender of like the stuff and the style that I did originally. That was like my original approach. And yeah, I mean, but I think I think the thing, when Dave and I first kind of met and we're talking through this, and Dave's passion with his podcast is like, it's pretty infectious. I would say it's kind of astounding. It's almost mystifying, the level of devotion that Dave brings to what he does. And I find him very articulate about music, which is what makes the podcast interesting. I think he actually articulates stuff that kind of blows my mind at times, not just about, I mean, he says things about my stuff, which is wonderful to hear, like, music to my ears, so to speak, because it's wonderfully complimentary, but also very, astute. But when he describes other things, I'm like, holy shit. I mean, he fucking nails shit the way he talks about it. But I think when you do, podcasts are largely a labor of love. And I think for most of us, and I think Dave really imparted that to me, which was like, if you're going to do a podcast and you're going to do this, you're doing it for the love of it. It's not really like, and you can devote yourself to it and move it as far along as you can, but you do have to do it for the love of it and for the love of, and I think that's something that really I was really impressed by just how much passion Dave brought to what he did. So it kind of gave me like a little bit of a jump start when I started my own thing.
And it's true. And I think just as it is for an author or a musician, the secret to being successful as a podcaster is just keep doing it. The second you stop, you give up the opportunity of being successful. And however you measure the success, whether it's audience or artistic growth, whatever, the second you give up, that means that'll never happen. And I think a successful author is someone who finishes a book. A successful musician is someone who completes a song, album, or rock opera. Same thing with a podcaster. It's someone who just keeps plugging away on a consistent basis and just.
I would go one step further. I mean, when I think of and I usually think of music when I use this analogy. But for example, Bowie, after Scary Monsters, 3 years go by, he never recovered the momentum. He had great stuff after Scary Monsters, but he never recovered the momentum. So whenever I think about taking a week off, I think about Bowie in 1980, and I think I can't take a fucking week off. It'll never be the same again. I somehow will always find excuses to never be consistent, and so I've never missed a week in the over 2.5 years, and for that reason specifically.
Wow.
Okay, we can talk about Bowie. This is going to be a problem because I agree. Scary Monsters was the last Bowie masterpiece. Period. Full stop. 1980. I recently, Dave, for Christmas, I got the 1990s Bowie box set on vinyl, Brilliant Adventure. I kind of wrote off a lot of those records when they came out, specifically Earthling, Outside, Buddha of Suburbia. Listening to all those albums with fresh ears, there's some great stuff on there.
There is some great
stuff I did not give the time of day back in the 1990s, really. And the stuff he did in the 21st century, I mean, The Next Day, Black Star, I think, is a minor masterpiece.
That's incredible. Yeah. And, Buddha of Suburbia, that's got some incredible gems on it. In fact, there's an ambient piece on it called the Ian Fish UK Air, which is one of my favorite Bowie tracks. The only two records I just out and out don't like are probably Tonight and Never Let Me Down.
Right.
But all I'm trying to say is that it's one of the great streaks in rock history.
It is.
It definitively ends at Scary Monsters.
I don't know.
So going back to the other three tracks quickly, I'm absolutely in love and fascinated by Mark Robinson's, which sounds like an 8-bit video game.
Yeah,
Sure.
it does. His is so funny because I asked him, and I don't know exactly what the turnaround was, but it felt like the next day. It was really quick, deceptively quick, because I was like, I don't understand why it was so quick. Does he not care? But it's really grown on me, and a lot of people have also singled his out, and it stands out for that reason.
And Cory Hanson of Wand, his approach was, I think, the most true to the original blueprint that Lou Reed made. Definitely more noise making, feedback, loops. I mean, that he carried that original idea forward to the 21st century.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And then W. Cullen Hart of Olivia Tremor Control, co-founder of Elephant Six. It sounds like he was recording a voice memo on his phone while walking down the streets of Miami.
I love his piece. It really is, to me, the most, is sort of shackled to the idea of ambient. Although it's very much the music concrete thing that, that he's so great at. And also there's a bit of murder mystery in there, in VU murder mystery, in that there's two live mixes going on at once. Will Hart's doing it on one side, and BP Helium from Elf Power is doing it on the other channel, and it's two 16-minute, 1-second mixes, and there's a sort of aviary feel to it. Lou's like, what the fuck? Because he hasn't heard any of the other ones, right?
No, you've given me the opportunity to hear them, and I was just like, I can't. I was like, I have to just pursue this in a vacuum.
Yeah. No, I respect that.
I'm psyched to hear it now.
It's cool to hear it all together.
Yeah, I bet. I'm
It
psyched.
really is.
And again, because each 16-minute and 1-second track is its own journey.
Yeah.
It's 4 different stories in the
Yeah.
same compilation. Metal Machine Muzak out on May 3rd. Dave,
I do want to stress that this is not going to be on streaming. This is only available through Discograffiti's Patreon. So you got to go to patreon.com/discograffiti, and you can order either the double vinyl plus the digital or just the digital. The double vinyl, it's a really limited edition run. It's going to be 300 copies total, and only 100 or so are for sale. It's going to be on 180 gram vinyl. 2 of the pieces have what's it called? The infinite loop in the middle.
Locker.
What the name of it's for whatever reason, because I'm senile, is lost on me right now.
Lock Groove.
The Lock Groove, right? And it's on metallic silver vinyl.
Of course it
Nice.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. All right. So that's important to note. If you want to get your hands on this, you have to go to the Patreon site, and I'll make sure that it's included in the notes that go with this. Thinking before I cut both you guys loose, we're all creators. Lou, you have way more history as a creator than the rest of us. But what does it mean to be a creator in 2024? I feel like everyone thinks they're a creator because they've got a phone in their pocket and they're content creators. Is life better for you as a creator in the present day? Is it weirder?
I think it's better, I guess, just because I think the digital age with all of the things that it's kind of taken away. I mean, because I mean, I don't think that any of us really want to be, no one really wants to have an honest discussion about how shitty streaming music sounds, and so I think that the art has been, I mean, the texture of things has been degraded quite a bit, but that kind of works in my favor because I've always done kind of a degraded version of. I do love the idea of podcasts because it's so direct. I don't know how long it's going to last, this sort of thing where people want to hear people speaking. And it's kind of a mysterious concept, but I love that right now I love that I've made new things every week and I've made new songs it's really helped. I've really gone in and done covers of other people's songs and climbed into that. And I was managed to do a folk implosion record that's coming out also in June. So I mean, I find it's very daunting. There is an aspect of like, because they're like what you're saying, everyone's a creator, and there's this like you got to do it every day, and this pressure of that's unnerving, and but at the same time, I don't know. It's actually bringing me back to the way that I felt when I was a kid making music and how immediate I wanted everything to be and how I wanted short songs and I wanted noise and I wanted this and I just wanted everything at once. And I love that we are so like we're all kind of empowered by this incredible technology. Like we all are empowered to go at things our own way, and you never really know what's going to break through. You never know. I mean, human beings make such beautiful art, and we always figure out our ways around all of these things where there's always these doomsday scenarios, but we always figure ways around it, Like people are going to figure amazing ways around AI, it's like AI is going to destroy music. I mean, it's such a wild like really? I mean, is it going to destroy it? I mean, will AI destroy stand-up comedy? No. Like, will the individual expression ever be destroyed? But it's like it won't be. All of I just love that there's so much to react to right now. I do love the immediacy of everything. I do find it a little bit fatiguing from time to time, but then again, it also makes me live my life around it. Like Dave said, it's like, look, you figure out a way to continue to create around all of this distraction, and maybe in a way it's helping us like really focus in on what we do want to say and what makes it individual. And I love that. I love the fact that people have figured out that doing the weirdest shit possible is what you should do. Like everybody across the board, pop, experimental. I think it's just that you do have to zero in on the essence of yourself and the essence of what makes you unique. And I like that it's all out there and that we actually do have, regardless of all of the narratives that we can put on it, the fact is that that we are empowered. We're more empowered now to make our own art and follow it through the way that we wish. And we may find some followers. And it really doesn't take that much. There's a lot of fucking people in the world. You just have to connect. You connect with a very small group of people, which could be anywhere between 50 to 2,000 people. And you can find that gives you a whole new reason to live and to communicate, It's amazing.
And I think you hit the right chord. You talked about being as weird as you are. It's that notion of authenticity. The
Yeah.
more true to yourself you are and how you communicate as a creator or person, the more people connect with it.
Yeah.
The less full of shit you are, the more true you are, the more
Yeah.
resonant you become.
Yeah. And I
Dave, what
think
do you
that,
think? Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I went to film school. I'm a filmmaker first, and the very first film I did sampled Polito. There's a which is Lou's first, I believe, foray into 4-track confessional style. And there's a scene in it where a stoned Jesus Christ goes to a Bruce Lee movie and lights up in the bathroom, and then when he approaches the popcorn, the concession stand, you hear Jesus, sweet Jesus, Jesus, sweet Jesus, Jesus, sweet Jesus, and Lou is, as specifically Lou, I will say that he's been creating stuff for 40 years and seems engaged and inspired by the need and necessity for this to be a consistent thing. I too am, sometimes just slumped in a corner, fatigued by because if you're not doing it all the time, ultimately the followers are going to find someone else to follow because it's a kind of a tired society of just people at urinals, just, scrolling. I go take a piss with my phone and I'm just, scrolling to the next digital creator. But to me, I'll talk about my relationship with my own stuff. A year ago yesterday, I was bleeding to death, and I came very close to bleeding to death. I was laying on an emergency room table, and I was, while they were trying to stop the bleeding, I was posting about a show that I had just put up that morning about a group called the Chimps. It was on Patreon too. It wasn't even a publicly available show. The Chimps were a band like the Monkees were to the Beatles, like the Chimps were to the Monkees. So in essence, the Monkees had their own monkeys and they were called the Chimps. And I wasn't trying to promote this, but a woman, a nurse, had her finger up my asshole and was trying to stop the bleeding. And I turned to her and I said, "You're not going to believe this, but the Monkees had their own monkeys and they were called the Chimps." And I said it not trying to like tune in today. It wasn't like, it was that I could not get over this concept. So look, these things are carrying me through my day to day, no matter what is happening. I am forced to find out about things that maybe in my daily torpor I wouldn't give a fuck about because I wouldn't be forced to hunt them down. But music and music history and the arc of a career, all these things are so endlessly interesting to me. They will never cease to be interesting to me. So, I'm not in thrall as much to my followers because anyone who is frankly is listening to my show and is not paying me at this point, I have resentment towards. I don't even consider them true fans anymore. I've grown to have a different relationship with those people. So to me, now I'm on a quest to monetize because this is not a side project for me. But to anyone who's honestly creating out there, like Lou is like putting his heart and soul into these things that he's doing, whether or not they're for major record labels or just a thing on a Patreon, on a website. It all means the same to him, and it all means the same to me. It's democratized inspiration.
Well said. I worry that by you talking about the Chimps, that people listening are going to Google that before they Google Metal Machine music.
And guess what? I would be okay with that. As I really would, because it's an amazing tale. It really is an incredible tale. And as long as there's things out there to inspire the spirit in all of us, sort of subterranean weirdos, That's all I'm looking for as a 52-year-old man.
One final thought, which just came up as you were talking, something I talk about a lot is the need for curation. I mean, I came up in radio where people knew who their favorite disc jockeys were, and they knew which specialty shows were going to play Sebado songs or Folk Implosion, whatever. These days, curation is done 90% of the time mechanically or automatically through AI, robotics. I think the value of having flesh and blood people who can turn you on to music can't be overstated. Whether it's your podcast, Discograffiti, whether it's Lou talking about the stuff that inspires him, we need more curators because I think we've abdicated that role. We as a society have abdicated that role to algorithms.
Well, my show goes one further because a lot of the artists, I put them in a position of curating their own material. You know, not everyone does that. I mean, it's a lot of, like, Lou came on and did the Zombies, but I had the Association, Vashti Bunyan, a bunch of other artists. Michelle Phillips. I'm running a 16-hour interview with Michelle Phillips right now, and I'm forcing all of them to give ratings to their own work.
That's awesome.
And you don't get any more, like, especially when we're coming up on their bad records. People are going to know if I'm lying and I'm giving it a 4 stars when it deserves 1 star. So it's like walking on eggshells during those sections, but to me, that's thrilling.
Metal Machine Muzak. If you go to the Discograffiti Patreon, you can pre-order the vinyl. It's about as limited gets. What do you say? 100 of the 300 pressed are going to be up for grabs. Any vinyl collector on earth knows that as a siren song. That's they're going
to be hand numbered.
Yeah, that's a collector's magnet right there.
Yeah. But the digital will be there in perpetuity, of course.
For sure. Really, what a great idea. Anyone could have done a tribute album to New York or even Mistrial. I think this was an ambitious thing to take on, and you nailed it. I think this is really cool.
One thing I want to add is, like, I think when it comes to tribute, like, that is a real key word to this, because Lou Reed was a profound, I mean, like, I wouldn't want to really, like, try to narrow in on one song by him. You have to, like Lou Reed is like an inspiration, just him, his journey, and by having this open-ended piece to work, that was, like, truly, like, that's a fucking tribute. It's like where you can make a tribute to, like, someone who was really a really diverse artist, was also fucking primitive. I mean, for me, it's like, I love Lou Reed so much because he's, like, has this primitive aspect of what he does that he just held on to till the end, but at the same time, like, making some of the most incredibly beautifully, like, elegant music, but primitive. And I mean, just everything. I mean, the Velvet Underground had such a profound influence on me as a kid. I mean, that just trying to find those records, and those were transmissions. I mean, Velvet Underground sounded like I couldn't, it was amazing. It was like like finding an alternate universe.
Would you ever cover a Lou Reed song? Like a proper cover, like a Satellite of Love, or?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't, except maybe like Run, Run, Run. I'd do that. But or no, I would go back and do the Ostrich or something like that. Or no, there's so many. Oh god, there's actually some really early beautiful stuff that was generally only on these really hard to find bootlegs that were kind of circulating in the 80s. Yeah. Sorry, I'm thinking
some of the stuff on Berlin, you would do killer versions of it.
I never liked Berlin, and I heard some Street Hassle recently, and I'm like, I have to actually dip into that one, because I heard that and I was like, what is this? And I thought it sounded amazing, but Berlin never hooked for me.
Yeah.
I was telling Dave before you got on, Lou, my first Lou Reed concert was the Mistrial tour. So, I'm a fan if I made it through the original Rapper and songs like that and came back around.
Right.
I was willing. That was a tough period for Lou Reed.
They didn't seem to give a fuck. That was the great.
And that is the red thread through all of this.
Unapologetic. Yeah. I'm just like, he didn't. I mean, just He's like, whatever. I've heard really funny shit. Like, what did he say? Like, oh, you just have to think about me. You don't have to actually practice and play. You just think about it. I was like, oh. I was like, asshole. That's true. Fuck.
All right. So Metal Machine Muzak, May 3rd is the date, patreon.com/discograffiti. Guys, congratulations on making it to the finish line with this. It's really cool. And this is going back to the notion of what it is to be a creator in the modern day. This is an example of that kind of really cool long tail stuff. You let your freak flag fly, and it's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
guys.
definitely check out Raw Impressions as well. It's a great show.
Yeah. Check out my podcast.
Yeah. And also, Folk Implosion aren't just coming out with a record; they're touring this summer, and it's the first.
That's right. I got all kinds of Folk Implosion stuff coming up. We just
Yeah.
announced the record last week, and there's a single out. There's a single on Spotify and all that shit too, called Moonlit Kind.
And they're
Amazing.
coming to a backyard in Cedar Grove, New Jersey.
That's right. Going back to it.
Well, will we get you in Chicago, Lou?
Yeah, we'll make
Good.
it in the latter part of the summer, probably in
Awesome.
July. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll see you there.
All right,
Thank you,
man.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, gents.